Now, President Akufo-Addo has met with all losing candidates in the new Patriotic Party. He's just ended parliamentary primary to appeal to them to continue to support the party's 2020 re-election campaign. The meeting took place as part of efforts by a reconciliation committee chaired by the Chief of Staff, Rema Osel-Pari, to repair relationships between the various candidates and present a united front for the main election. The run-up to the party's primary saw some candidates threaten to run independent amidst complaints they were being frustrated out of the race. National organizer of the NPP, Samie Oku, however, says efforts are being made to correct the erroneous impression.
And for us as a party, we've activated a reconciliation wing chaired by Madam Chief of Staff. I can also confidently tell you that His Excellency the President met all those defeated aspirants, our members of Parliament who lost their bid over the weekend. He's met all of them. He met them last night, and also once again to encourage them, to cheer them up and let them know that, look, let's rededicate ourselves. Once we are in this enterprise together, your expertise will be needed, and where we need to also help, support and push you, the party will be willing to also do that.
I just read coming in that in Bekwai, the one who lost to Jose Wusu would want to go independent.
Well, we haven't been officially notified, but once those rumors are out there, we will also take steps to engage each and everyone. It's a healing process. It might not take 24 hours to do that. It might be slow, but we'll definitely get there. So sometimes there's that temptation when emotions are high, when you feel that, no, you should have been treated this way, or you ended up being treated that way. It's incumbent on us as a political party and its leadership to ensure that we mend the cracks and calmness, and also assure even those who lost that we are in this together.
The NPP's National Council will meet Saturday to acclaim President Akufo-Addo as presidential candidate for the December election. Mr. Oku cautioned that this is only open to the council members.
Let me use this platform to properly make it clear that the tomorrow National Council meeting, which will acclaim the presidential candidate and the running mate, strictly, if you are not a member of the National Council, please don't come. And we have members of the National Council clearly stated here. The National Council of the party, per Article 10 of the NPP's constitution, it includes voting members of the National Executive Committee, 20 members of parliament chosen by the party's parliamentary group, regional representatives, the past national chairpersons, past general secretaries, past president, past vice president, past presidential candidate, past running mate, the president if you are in government, vice president if you are in government, the presidential candidate and the presidential running mate. These are members of the National Council. Please, this is not the time to show that you're a big man in our party. We need to go strictly by the protocols, and that is ensuring that we don't have more than 100 people. The National Council in its setup is just around 92 to 95.
So if you have a few more people coming in?
We don't want to have few more people coming in, and people will be assigned their seats. Please don't come and be embarrassed if you don't qualify under Article 10 of the NPP's constitution. And the whole world will be watching us, and we don't expect to make the headlines for the wrong reasons on Joy Prime. So that is why we are asking that people should also assist us to make this process smooth. And we are going to enforce this. We've tasked the security agencies that we've also asked them to help
to make sure
the process of gathering. To make sure that anybody coming in, you have this your tag. Today, the party will have its National Executive Committee. And all those who are expected to be there tomorrow will be issued with their accreditation. We expect that the media too will bear with us. You know, I'm trying to be very diplomatic in the choice of words, but I think the NDC is trying to hold on to straws. I'm saying this because I have seen a video gone viral of Mr. Mahama in the Volta region, where majority of the people that even gathered to listen to him, many of them were not in face mask or observing the social distance protocols. If there cannot be a justification for us to go through a process of registering, because which is a fundamental requirement for you to be a voter, you must have a voter's ID. How are we going to line up on the day of elections to vote? Don't forget this. Even in the midst of the pandemic, South Korea organized one of their best elections. And that's next door to China. You also have Malawi going for their elections in July.
You also had France go for an election and see a spike of cases after the election.
But the point is that
they had to hold on to their last
by-election. But we have been told by health experts and by WHO and our local authorities here that this disease has come to stay. Unless you want us to have a one-party state, where until we see the downward trend of this pandemic, we should allow one government to be in office for long. The MPP, we are clear in our minds. We don't want to exceed our mandate by even a minute. By 6th of January 2021, we should bring our term of office to a close. If the Ghanaian people on December 7th decide to extend our mandate, we live beyond the 6th of January 2021. So if you cannot rehearse what is going to take place on the 7th of December, what exercise are you going to use to test your level of preparedness, to know the loopholes and how to block these loopholes ahead of December? Ivory Coast, as we speak, they've started compiling a new voters register. Ivory Coast have their elections in October, not December. They started this exercise just a week or two ago. So I think that instead of pressing the fear button, for us as a people, let's see how we can support each other. This pandemic, it doesn't know former presidents or the cocoa seller. Everybody is at risk. But the EC, in its normal duties or in the exercise of its duties, cannot say that because of the pandemic, our national lives must come to a halt.
Hello again, my name is Ernest Mino. Let's settle for the details now. And Deputy Attorney General Godfrey Adeboadame says the EC will no longer face any legal impediment preventing it from registering Ghanaians on Tuesday. 2 cases against the EC's exercise were dismissed yesterday, with the court holding that the existing voter's ID card cannot be used for registration. There's, however, 1 case filed by NDC MP for Ashaman Ernest Nobe, which is pending at the Accra High Court and due Monday. Mr. Dami says his office will be urging the court to dismiss that case, as well as maintaining the Supreme Court's extensively dealt with, as the Supreme Court dealt with the issue, and the MP is asking the court to address the matter. We can now hear from the Deputy Attorney General.
Yes, so it says by this decision, the Electoral Commission, second defendant, is hereby directed to commence the compulsory voter registration as scheduled. Then by these decisions as well, they proceeded that any court in which same or similar action is pending or yet to be filed shall apply the decision rendered by the Supreme Court in these cases. So no court has the option of electing whether to comply or obey this ruling. The Supreme Court has ordered an exercise of its powers over all lower courts in the country, that this decision is a final decision on the matter and must be complied with by the court.
We know they had filed for an injunction which they are supposed to move on Monday, so it means that Monday they will have to go for you have to go and argue that injunction before the court and ask them to abide by the decision of the Apex Court, or it will place automatically they are not going to have a hearing at all. Yeah, so this decision will be brought to the attention of the High Court, and the High Court will make an order according, dismissing, in essence, all the reliefs sought. All the reliefs sought are also in the nature of the reliefs that, or similar to the reliefs that were being claimed in the Supreme Court. So the court will not have to hear an injunction and then come back and hear the substantive suit. The presiding judge would definitely, in accordance with this ruling, proceed to issue the necessary orders, which will be on all fours as the instant action. But going for a judicial review, is it not fair that they allow the courts to just take a look at the process leading to the decision to compile the register, which is what normally judicial review looks at, as against the interpretation and enforcement which has been carried out by the Supreme Court?
Now, the Supreme Court under Article 129 of the Constitution has the power to exercise all powers vested in any court at all. That we call it the residual jurisdiction, the residual power of the Supreme Court. They can exercise all powers that are lawfully vested in any court or tribunal in the country. So the Supreme Court, in exercise of the powers conferred on it by the Constitution under Article 129, has made its consequential orders, and all courts are supposed to comply. I think the essence is quite clear that there ought to be order in the administration of justice. There cannot be a situation where the Supreme Court has taken its time to adjudicate on this matter, made orders which are binding on the NDC and all citizens, and then another citizen will be prosecuting another matter in the lower court. So for the sake of ensuring order and an efficient administration of justice, the Supreme Court has exercised its powers under Article 129 and made these orders, and all courts will be required to comply.
Let's go back to our earlier story on the Supreme Court ruling and speak to a lawyer. Bernard Oredu joins us on the phone with some more analysis on this. Thank you very much for your time here on News Desk. I'm sure you've been looking at the Supreme Court ruling. Let me take your general impressions of the court's decision in the context of all that we've seen in Parliament and on the political front.
Well, good morning to your viewers. Let me say that I would like the viewers to understand that the Supreme Court, in taking decisions and later coming to give reasons, is very normal. They will give the decisions, their conclusions, and would say that their reasoning behind the conclusions or decisions will be given later. That's the normal happening with the Supreme Court. If you could remember, even the election petition was on those lines, where the Supreme Court gave its decision, but the reasoning behind its decision was given at a later time. So just say that it is very normal. It is a daily occurrence by the Supreme Court where a decision is given, but the reasoning is deferred at a later date.
And now we have the EC being given the green light to go ahead, but there's this gray area I want to pick your thoughts on. Some portions of the release...
Back to the ruling itself. I understand the fuss on social media, especially with the interview granted by the General Secretary. But the Supreme Court has been very clear, and it was unanimous, that every registration, every person to be registered as a voter is supposed to meet the requirements under CI 126.
Okay.
If you're a Ghanaian and you want to assert your right under Article 42, you need to first be a registered voter. And to be a registered voter, you need to go by the tenets or the provisions of CI 126. So the Supreme Court has been very clear that no Ghanaian is supposed to be disenfranchised once you're a registered voter. But first, you need to meet the requirements under CI 126, which has excluded the use of the old voter ID card.
And indeed, we've had the NDC subsequently, allude to that interpretation with the address that was given by the former president yesterday, except that they are disappointed in the court's decision. I'm wondering that going forward, what will happen? The deputy AG says that it doesn't look like the EC will be faced with any legal impediment. Doesn't necessarily mean so because of the Ernest Nodbe case, which is at the High Court, which the Supreme Court is directing that all related matters must be guided by its decision yesterday. Can we necessarily say that the EC is out of the woods as far as legal issues are concerned?
Yes, for now we could say that because litigation must, out of necessity, come to an end. The Supreme Court was emphatic that, of course, the Supreme Court is the highest decision-making judicial body in the country. And once the Supreme Court has spoken, it brings finality to all matters. But no one is shut from the doors or the corridors of justice. But what the Supreme Court has said that if what you seek, if the remedy you seek from any court or at the Supreme Court is similar to what has been decided on already, then the door is closed on you. Because the main issue was to whether the exclusion of the old voter register by the CI 126 was proper in law. And the Supreme Court has been clear on that yes, the laws of our land, as our constitution, gives the Electoral Commission the mandate to compile new voter register. And in compiling the new voter register, it is also their mandate to give Ghanaians the guidelines concerning the compilation of a new register. And this currently is the CI 126. So if the CI 126 has excluded the use of the old voter ID card, then that be it. So you can't come to court or you can't go to any other court seeking a similar remedy or seeking a similar declaration to that effect. And the Supreme Court has been unanimous on that. So for me, I would say as at now, The EC is out of the woods. The EC has been cleared to go about its compilation of a new voter register, unless probably another angle is being challenged. But as to the matter as to whether the old voter ID card could be used, it has been well settled. The answer is no. It cannot be used because the CI 126 has excluded it.
I want to pick your brain on this issue. So we now have the NI card and a passport as the source document. The other option is for a qualified person to guarantee for you. On the issue of a passport, if I hold a passport that expires today, but my name is in the system, perhaps I registered not long ago, but it's just expired, can I present that as a valid document?
No. An expired passport is not a valid document. That is why passports are given duration. So once your passport has been expired, then you either fall within the categories of those who could use the national ID card, or those who would have to seek two people who have been already registered to vouch for them to vote. An expired document has no validity in law.
Very well. Thank you very much for your time here on News Desk. That's lawyer Bernard Oredu, bringing us some education on the decision by the Supreme Court yesterday on the compilation of a new voters register. And with only 5 months to the 2020 general elections, legal and governance experts are advising the Electoral Commission to intensify education to engender citizen participation in the new voter registration exercise starting Tuesday. Some of them have been speaking on the AM show.
The Supreme Court was very clear that if any time the Electoral Commission decides to conduct fresh registration, the possession by a person of an existing voter's ID card that is seeks to discard is a prima facie evidence of citizenship. So why would the Electoral Commission now come to Parliament and say that a document that is good enough to determine citizenship in another process in the same country within the same period is not good enough to determine citizenship for the same process for Electoral Commission? And I speak specifically of the law underpinning the work that the NIA is presently conducting. So they keep shifting the goalposts. Their claim was that the only reason they want to discard the existing voters register is because they want to introduce facial recognition features, no longer biometric. So I don't get the fact that we didn't use both existing voters ID card before or in the previous elections in the 90s doesn't make it unlawful for it to be done now.
I'm still concerned about the timing. I think the Electoral Commission has tried to address some of that by reducing the number of days that the registration team will be on the ground. If you recall, the initial estimation and what we have done in normal times was about 10 days at a time. Now that has been reduced to 6 days. There's some attempt to maybe add on to the registration kits so that, we would be able to, collect the data as quickly as possible. And of course, we are doing it for a shorter period, also within the context of COVID. And so we don't know how long the process will take. Now that we know protocols and other kinds of things. The estimation is that they want to 100 people at a time. The trials suggested an average of 85, but they're still pilots. And if you get in very populated urban areas where you may encounter different problems, we are yet to see. And then we also have to count in the rainy season, possible disruptions, and so on. So there's still a lot of unknown factors that would maybe shape the way the process goes. At least I know there's about 7 days that have been provided for a mop-up process. So there's still an issue of timing, because even if we are done with this process through August and definitely into September, then we are basically entering into nomination, and then, you know, it goes on and on.
The Supreme Court has pronounced on that. That's the end. We move on to do the registration, and we get people into the register with the hope that all those other names that we don't want at the end of the day would be expunged from the register so that we'll get a clean one. It is my hope and prayer that we will get a clean register so that this tango will not be repeated in the next election. We also know that as we are going about the registration, we have COVID around our necks. We want the Electoral Commission to be very careful to take care of that so that we don't go and register only to come home to die of COVID.
You're watching News Desk with me, and Asmin. Right now, let's take you to the Seafarers Alisa Hotel, where the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs is engaging independent governance institutions at a forum under the theme Independent Governance Institution and the 2020 Elections, Some Reflections.
Advisory opinions on aspects of the election that impinge on human rights, that impinge on corruption, that impinge on administrative justice. One, as part of our role to promote human rights and administrative justice and secure a conducive environment for the elections. I wouldn't want to join Josephine in cataloging the issues of IGIs. I can only say what she spoke for all of us. And so what is good for the goose should be good for the gander. So, Chair, we look forward to your leadership and your ministry, because this is a very good start. We think you should be able to bring us together as often as possible, and let's handle those knotty structural constitutional issues that seem to detract from the work of the IGS. On that note, thank you so much.
And so that is a live feed from the Seafarers Alisa Hotel, where the Ministry for Parliamentary Affairs is engaging independent governance institutions at a forum under the theme Independent Governance Institutions and the 2020 Elections, Some Reflection. Just gone by was the Commissioner of Straj, Joseph Wotal. We have the Chief Director the Parliamentary Affairs Ministry, Dr. Evans Agredako, there speaking. Let's go back to the feed now.
To enhance the development of this country. Ladies and gentlemen, the last presentation is going to be delivered by the Electoral Commission. And to do this for us is Alexander Poku Ekubia. Ekubia is the Acting Director of Research, Monitoring and Evaluation of the Electoral Commission of Ghana. You are welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observed. I bring you greetings from the chairperson of the Electoral Commission and the Commission as a whole. The chair wants me to apologize profusely to the organizers and the participants that she was not able to make it. They have to go and deal with some issues at Parliament. Hence, I'm here to represent the Commission. The topic given to the Commission is toward an effective electoral management in Ghana, the 2020 elections in perspective. I'll briefly talk about the importance of election, the players in the administration of election, how complex the election management is, what EC has done and what EC is doing to ensure that we have a very successful election, and what other critical stakeholders can also do so that we can achieve a successful election in 2020. Elections, as we may know, is a way of choosing representatives to offices, public offices. And most people have said that elections are one of the cornerstones of democracy. And I always say that if elections are cornerstone of democracy, then election management bodies are midwives of democracy. We have to appreciate the fact that there are many players in the arena of election management. And it's not only election management bodies that carry out the task of election management, because the election management involves the mobilization and the prudent and pragmatic use of resources, material, financial, to ensure that the outcomes of elections really reflect the will of the people. That the outcomes of the elections should really reflect the will of the people. Unfortunately, election management bodies, and for this matter the EC, has not got control over all these actors in the management of elections, even though we have been given the constitutional mandate to do what? To conduct elections. The onus is on us, but other actors also play a critical role. Our past elections has really confirmed that without the civil society organization, the security, the media, development partners, we couldn't have achieved a successful election 7 times after we have relaunched our multi-party democracy. So like I've said, election management is a huge task, and it is very complex. And why is it complex? Because the players like the political parties, the voters, the staff of the Electoral Commission itself, civil society, they all have their expectations and interests which may not be the same. And the Electoral Commission will need to manage all these things to make sure that people or the ordinary man is able to do what? To cast his or her vote. So effective election management, simply put, is just, we can say that it's a successful election, and a successful election is an election that is free and fair. And when we talk about the freeness of the elections, we are talking about the people enjoying their what? The fundamental human rights, so that they can carry out their electoral activities peacefully. And we are also saying that the election environment should be free from intimidation and other things that will not make it possible for people to have the equal right or have the equality of weight of votes.
And that was a live feed from the Seafarers Alisa Hotel. It's a forum by the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs on governance, engaging a number of governance institutions ahead of the 2020 elections. So we'll bring you more on what is happening there later in our bulletins. But now, the National Coordinator of the Coronavirus Response Program, Dr. Anefi Asamoah, has told Parliament his team cannot predict when Ghana will reach coronavirus infection peak. The Ghana Health Service in May said Ghana had reached its peak, a claim that was fiercely challenged by many analysts, including the Center for Democratic Development, CDD, and that's the fellow, Dr. Kwame Sedu Sapon. But Dr. Anefi Asamoah said for now, Ghana's infection peak cannot be predicted.
Given the trend, when do we think it will peak? And really the true answer is, I don't know. This is a really tricky business, and it's very easy to misquote somebody. The trend is still going up, and it's very difficult to really say in a matter of, I need to be a pastor or prophet to be able to do that. The third question was related, are we still having challenges with PPE? And the answer is yes.
Now, on the issue concerning transparency in the fight against the virus, Dr. Asamoah assured the team will continue to be more transparent, especially with cases concerning people who die of COVID-19 and testing.
Testing. It means those who are sick, who are in the hospital, who need to be tested, have to wait. And it plugs the hospital up, and that's where sometimes people say that the hospitals are overwhelmed. So if you will agree with us, I think the first testing has been done. Subsequent testing, let us go strictly according to either you are exposed to somebody or you have signs and symptoms. Likely you have a clinic here. At Tapambo and his people are there. Anytime you have a problem, just rush to the hospital. And if you have the signs and symptoms which fit into the definition of the case, you'll quickly be tested. And when you are tested and you are found to be positive, then all your contacts will also be tested. That should be the case, and that is how we are doing it. And this is the way that we are going.
And so that was Presidential Advice on Health, Dr. Insia Sari, talking about government's response team having to halt the decision to go on mass testing. And he spoke in Parliament when he went there to brief the House on measures taken so far, together with the leader of the COVID response team, Dr. Anefi as you heard earlier. Now, Dr. Insia Sari also entreated MPs to be ambassadors to support the government's efforts by intensifying health education at the various constituencies and rural communities to win the fight. Let's bring you some more stories here on News Desk. She lost one eye to a cancerous tumor, retinoblastoma, when she was barely a year old. This tumor, which is spreading to the other eye, according to doctors, could have affected other parts of her body. Though the cancer was curable, the Dani family couldn't afford treatment and surgery to save the life of their little Maulam. But today, there's hope, and we'll tell you about that hope later after this break. Stay with us here on News Desk. Thanks for staying with us here on News Desk. Now, senior staff of public universities are accusing the government of unfairness in the award of market premium and non-basic allowances for public workers. They question the exclusion from the recently introduced service condition when their colleagues in the civil and local government sector have it. They have been speaking at a news briefing in Kumasi.
That the award of the market premium and non-basic allowance, in fact, is unscientific and discriminatory. Government reserves the right, as per the white paper, to give or award the market premium to any category of public service employees. But the application of it is what we are contesting. we have found out that the basis for government awarding this market premium is to further entrench the dam and NAS syndrome that has characterized university administration in this country. We have also observed further that the award was made in view of academic qualifications. And we are challenging government to conduct a survey. It will come to light that the senior staff cadre has a majority of our members who hold MPhils and professional qualifications. So in actual fact, we have some senior staff who are more qualified than some senior members, yet they are not benefiting from this market premium.
The association also joined calls for government to rescind its decision to tax end-of-service benefits of retirees.
Recently, we also had the unfortunate situation of our members who were in acting positions being stripped of the responsibility, entertainment, and fuel allowances that accompanied those positions. We are told that the basis for this is that the Unified Conditions of Service makes provision for us in such positions to be paid 20% of our basic salary. We do not intend to contest this. However, we want to say that the very document which contains this provision or clause has outlived its usefulness. The document is supposed to be reviewed. The Unified Conditions of Service is supposed to be reviewed every 5 years. The last time a review was done was in 2008. It obviously tells you that it does not reflect the reality on the ground.
Reporting for Joy News, Kwesi Debra.
And you're watching News Desk with me, Ernest Minu. We have business for you after this break. Don't go away. Let's get the latest in the world of business from Daryl Kwal. He joins us from home. Hello, Daryl. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ernest. How are you doing?
Well, I'm fine. What's the latest you have for us today?
Well, Ernest, West African government ministers have proposed reopening borders between their countries in the first half of July and allowing travelers from other countries with low or controlled levels of coronavirus spread by the end of July. Countries across the West Africa 15 ECOWAS trade bloc have imposed varying levels of travel restrictions in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But with Ghana's case count on the rise, are we ready for the reopening? Here's Country Director of CATS International, Apia Kusi Adumako.
I think at the regional level, ECOWAS is leading an interministerial effort to get all borders open in a phased approach. So starting from 1st of July, they want all borders to be open for goods. And then on the 7th of July is also countries should start resume domestic airlines. And then by the 31st of July, they expect movement of goods and passengers across all borders. However, there's a caveat. ECOWAS wants member countries to ensure that the opening of the borders that do not result in a surge in the crisis. So if, let's say, between Aflao and Lomé, there's a high incidence of the virus, they want countries to take measures to prevent the surge of the virus. So there's a lot of measures but I think that it's very good to see the borders open to enhance trade, because there are some goods that we in Ghana will need from Nigeria and other goods that Nigeria also needs from Ghana. So opening the borders will allow international trade to flow, and people will be able to sell, and economic activities will come back to the pre-crisis level. I think whether or not at a point in time we would have to open the borders by ensuring that we have protocols to go about. Currently, the cases have surged up and keeps on surging, and the president has not ordered the mass lockdown of the country. And so we should be able to go about our normal activities by ensuring that everybody complies with the social distancing, the hygiene, and all the other protocols. So I think we can allow the borders to be open and ensure that people who are coming in go through the required safety checks. And possibly we can start with some special corridors. Not all the. Let's say Ghana and Togo, we can only decide to allow only one pathway to be open so that they can monitor everybody coming in, because we cannot remain closed forever. Certainly not.
The views of CAT's country director there, Kusia Pia Adumaku. Let's move on now. Managing director of the Ghana Maritime Authority, Thomas Kofi Alonso, is asking for public support to enhance the work of seafarers who risk their lives on the maritime waters. He says the COVID-19 outbreak has placed so much pressure on the operations and the need for support. He was speaking at a media event to commemorate this year's World Seafarers Day in Accra.
World Seafarers Day is celebrated every 25th June by United States member countries to appreciate the contribution of seafarers in their country's GDP. This year's event is under the theme, Seafarers are key workers, essential to shipping, essential to the world. Managing Director of the Ghana Maritime Authority, Thomas Kofi Alonso, said seafarers must be given the necessary support and recognition for their hard work.
Under normal circumstances, the Day of the Seafarer campaign is organized to demonstrate how much seafarers matter to us. On those special days, social events and activities are organized to honor the enormous sacrifices they make for our comfort. With the unprecedented situation of the current global pandemic, this year, the Day of the Seafarer campaign calls for the recognition of seafarers as key workers within the context of the coronavirus pandemic. It also advocates for seafarers the provision of support and to ensure that seafarers are given the recognition they deserve for keeping the world moving in these trying times.
He underscored the need for recognition for their selfless dedication towards economic growth, especially in the wake of the global pandemic.
In these challenging times, seafarers have been the unsung heroes of this pandemic, as the world relies on them to transport about 80% of trade by volume, including vital food and medical goods, energy and raw materials, as well as manufactured goods across the globe. As they continue in this heroic profession, they have become collateral victims of the crisis, as travel restrictions have left tens of thousands of them stranded on ships or unable to join ships.
The Day of the Seafarer campaign is focused on paying tribute to seafarers during this COVID-19 era.
And that's your business update for now. Back to you in studio.